well, what we understand is that there were two boats that left the coast of Turkey, then in the early hours of this morning, we started to hear news that there had been some mass deaths in the sea, and two boats had capsized and many people had died and many more were missing. And one of those boats, as we understand it, it had only women travelling in it, and also a young child who we understand to have also died in this tragedy.
It's just so sad, Beth. And Greece had recently toughened some of their policies on migration there, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that there are no safe ways to get to Greece if you're a refugee. They simply don't exist for the vast majority of refugees. And there's a very tough stance on refugees who do come via boat or over the land border with Turkey. And the problem is many of these refugees are seeking sanctuary. They're fleeing persecution, and they're fleeing extremely difficult circumstances. And some of them have family in the UK, in Greece and in Europe, and they have no say to reach them. And so they are forced to take these dangerous alternatives with these tragic consequences that we see here.
I mean, the pictures that we're seeing now are terrifying, to see people so desperate that they would climb these rocks or be stranded on these rocks. However, some people would also say that these policies, the tough policies you're seeing in Greece and also actually tougher policies here, is to prevent things like this happening and also to prevent people smugglers getting involved and benefiting off this.
Yeah, and that's what we all want to see, is that these desperate people are not exploited. But the problem is, as you can see here, people are extremely desperate. Imagine putting yourself in a flimsy dinghy in those waters to reach a place of safety. You must be at an incredible point of desperation. And these sort of brutal laws that are trying to deter people from arriving don't work, because people are fleeing war, people are fleeing persecution. What they're fleeing is often worse than what they're coming to. And so we have to take a different approach. And when there are no safe ways for people to reach countries like Greece and in Europe, people are pushed into the hands of smugglers, and that's when we see these tragedies happening. What we have to do is to open safe ways for people to get to Europe, for people to get to Greece, to reunite with family, as well as cracking down on smugglers, in order to give people safe options, because otherwise we will continue to see these tragedies happening on Europe's shores.
Beth, what would these safe passages look like from your point of view? What would you want countries to do?
Well, I think we've got a great example with the situation in Ukraine. We've seen European countries step up and offer safe passage to refugees who are fleeing the Ukraine situation. And that's absolutely right that we've done that. And that should be the model. There are, many refugees across the world who are in need of sanctuary. And Europe should be stepping up and doing its bit to offer safe routes for people to come through, whether that's to reunite with family or through resettlement. But at the moment, fewer than 10,000 people were resettled to Europe across the whole of the EU in 2020. I mean, that's just minimal. We can do so much more. And we've shown, as a continent, and Britain has shown too, that we can do so much more for refugees if there's the political will.